Welcome to the Beyond Divorce Embracing Change podcast. My name is Michael Flores, and I will be your host while we explore the complex journey of divorce with empathy, insight, and practical knowledge. Whether you're contemplating separation, in a divorce, or looking for support post-divorce, our episodes provide expert guidance, stories, and strategies to help you through every step of the process. We are actual therapists, helping clients who sit on our couches every day through their difficulties of divorce. You are not alone. Join us as we delve in and find solutions that give you hope again. We're glad you're here.
This podcast is not intended to replace legal or personal help. This podcast is for informational purposes only.
Well, welcome everyone. Thanks, Jen, for being here on this fun Ation series.
Yes.
I need to explain what Ation means. It's all the Ation words, right? Triangulation, Parentification. We have alienation. Well, yeah, that's the big one, isn't it? That's the Ation that always comes up in court.
Always.
Alienation.
Somewhere
yes.
in there. It
yes.
comes up.
Somewhere in there.
Well, in high conflict divorce. Not all divorces. Some of them are.
You sure? No, I'm teasing you. I'm just teasing you. No, you know, Jen, that I wouldn't disagree. I would say maybe it doesn't come up until there's conflict.
True.
Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe not.
Yeah. So this particular Ation that we're doing is triangulation.
Yes.
Yes. So
triangle.
We're going to talk about that. And I think it would be helpful for the listeners to go, what is triangulation? Like start with what is it?
What it is it's interesting for the fact of the matter. The basic definition is basically a manipulator, a person who is taking advantage of the interactions between two other people who aren't talking directly to each other. So they're exploiting other people's interactions without allowing them to have any kind of recourse for it.
Right. I think in divorce cases, it looks like that is a more common thing, is triangulation is almost seen as a manipulation. I do know in family systems theory that a triangle really depends on three parties.
Yeah.
So it's just really three types of interactions. So I'll give you an example. It'd be like you, mom, me, dad, in the school. There's a triangle. You, mom, me, dad, and our child is a triangle.
Mm-hmm.
And so when a divorce happens and there's children, it's you and me, and then that third party would be the kids. Yeah. And so a lot of times what happens is you'll hear terms like kids in the middle.
Oh, yeah. And that's totally a triangulation because you're putting your kid in the middle of your interaction.
Correct. And so the kid becomes that third leg, and so that becomes the triangle per se. So not all triangles are bad, which is, I think, something I want to make sure listeners understand. That triangulation actually is happening in everybody's lives right now if they're involved in a system. However, in this particular case with divorce, we're going to talk about some of the dangers of triangulation and what that might look like.
And it's usually more because it's used in this way, more of a manipulation to get someone else's. One parent may want something over the other one, and they're using the child as a way to do that.
What would be an example of that? A manipulation in using your triangle?
Well, let's say one parent A is trying to get more time with the child. And so they're telling the child bad things about parent B. Yeah. And then they're telling the parent B, no, the kid doesn't want to be with you. And they're not really talking about the whole system's not talking together. So you have a break there where parent B and child think they're both against each other. Mm-hmm. But really it's parent A who's manipulating both of them. Yeah,
it seems as if in triangulation, what you typically do is you try to create some kind of alignment. You want the child to align with one side of the triangle.
And then they feel like they have to choose.
Oh yeah, the kids. Yeah. Have you ever had a session where you've asked a child if, do you feel like you have to choose?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Do they answer that?
Yeah. And they're like, yeah. I was like, what does it feel like? Like pressure.
Yeah.
They feel pressure to choose.
Yeah.
And usually I also follow up with like, would it be nice if you didn't have to choose? Like, yeah, I really would like to not have to choose. Because they don't want to have to choose between their parents. They love both of their parents. And they want both of them. But I have one client in particular it makes me think of who really is getting pressure from both sides.
Oh, man.
Struggling to figure out what she should decide to do.
I did a training and I literally talked about this as called the tug of war.
Yeah.
Which the rope represents the child. And I did, I'll tell you, it's funny. I didn't come up with that.
Yeah.
A child in a session had stated, it feels like my parents are in a tug of war and I'm the rope.
Yeah.
And I
really
thought,
good description.
Isn't it? Isn't that like the kid in the middle? Like,
yeah.
And so
both directions.
So my question, I love analogies, by the way. So my question to them was, what should they do with this rope? Which is really them.
Yeah.
Because they're the rope. So what should they do with this rope? And they said, drop it. It's almost like you're making it about me, but it really has everything to do with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's the part with triangulating is, I want listeners to understand is, in a divorce, there's always triangulation. So there's 3 legs, and I'll tell it to you. There's a 4th if you want to include it. If there's children, right, there's a triangle.
Yeah.
There's one parent,
always.
one parent, kid. When there's no children, the court becomes that 3rd leg.
Yeah.
The court's the triangle.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and then there's also sometimes when you have siblings where you have one sibling aligns with this parent, one sibling aligns with that parent, and then you have the 2 siblings and a parent who are triangulating.
Well, so have you seen it?
You're trying to pull them to your side.
Yes, and I've seen it where one kid will pick one parent, one kid picks the other.
Yeah.
Because they're in that middle. And it's really interesting. This is why family systems work is so important.
Yeah.
Because of all the different dynamics.
Yeah. Well, and I think
happen.
with divorce, one of the things, what triangulation can really look like is a threat of you're no longer going to have a relationship if you choose this.
Oh, my goodness.
You're going to be excluded if you choose this.
So the threat of the relationship.
It becomes, that's where the triangulation kind of manipulates. If you do this, you're no longer allowed over here, or you're no longer welcome in this situation with me. I've had kids explain, well, if I like mom, I can't like dad.
I have to hate one to love one?
Exactly. I can't have both. I have to choose which one I want to be with more.
So remember we did an episode where we discussed the roles kids play in divorce. I think that I did that with an Armando.
Yeah.
I think that was Armando's meeting with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if triangulation, since it's existing in all these, if the way that you're dealing with your triangle is what almost puts the children in a position to play the role.
Yes. Because you have, especially when you have siblings, and the reason I say siblings is because what happens a lot of times when you have triangulation within the family, you have one child that becomes the golden child.
Oh.
And they are the ones that are seen, they're treated differently. They have different allowances, different things that are allowed to do, versus you have a scapegoat kid who's acting up and they're blamed for everything.
Well, when you said that, you made me think of some. Yeah. I don't remember where I heard this, but I remember hearing that children that grow up in a family, so you have more than one child, so you have, I don't know, 2 kids, 3 kids, whatever, 5 kids, that even though they grow up with the same parents, they actually don't have the same parents.
No, but there's parents change over time too.
Sure. Well, to the child, they say it's perspective. It's like, if I ask my 3 kids, what do you think of me as a dad?
Yeah.
I might get 3 different answers.
Oh, yeah.
I can get some similarities, but to each one of my kids, I'm a different dad. I'm real close to maybe one, not so close to another. And I wonder that kids will typically, when they see themselves in a triangle, there's a divorce, they're in the middle, it's triangulated, they now have to develop 2 new perspectives, right?
Yeah.
So one might be what you were like married to my parent.
Yeah.
Now there's another perspective, what you're like not married to my parent, right? And then they have a kind of an external view of you.
Yeah.
So there's a view of you every day that I saw or witnessed or what I believed. Then there's the view of you not around, right? And what that might look like. Or I start hearing things about you from one parent.
Yeah.
So there's so many factors.
Well, and it's funny. That actually makes sense because I have a lot of kids who, they always wonder what the parent is doing when they're not with them. They question them.
Describe more of that.
They question the other parent. Well, what do you do when I'm not there?
Oh, okay.
What they don't know what that other parent did. They make assumptions on what that parent does.
I see what you're saying.
And then they get into a conflict about it with the parent because they're like, well, you have all this time when you don't have me. Go do that stuff then, not while I'm there.
Because they're unaware of what's actually happening when
they don't understand. There's, life is life.
Interesting how that happens.
Life is life.
Yep. So what's the impact? I know that one of the topics we needed to touch on was what was the impact of triangulating?
What I have found, and the impact with triangulation, especially in a divorce situation, it usually goes towards the children. And what happens, though, is the kids can lose their sense of security. They have fear that comes up. They feel like they have to defend themselves. Or they may act on impulse where they're not really thinking clearly. They're acting to respond to whatever the parent is saying to please the parent and let the parent know, I love you and I care about you. I'm going to do this for you. But then they go to the other parent and do the same thing.
So you would say that kids that are triangulated can sometimes become parent pleasers.
Correct. Yeah. And I think the problem is, though, they feel like if they don't, they're going to have that sense of security taken away. If their parent security is different now, because now their parents are not together.
Right.
They're separate and they're getting different stories from each parent.
And I think I'm going to hit on this again. I think it's important that children crave really two things, don't they?
Yeah.
And one of them is security, which I believe is consistency. So to a child, if you're consistent, you say what you mean when you say, there's a follow through, that helps to reassure them and it's secure. Yeah. I mean, it's the whole point of Meet the Teacher Night, right? Is to get them to know what it's like and who is who, and it helps them see that. So
they
that
know what to expect.
Yes, and that gives them a sense of security.
Yeah.
So security, I think, is one. I think the other one is love. But to a child, love looks like time.
Always. Yes, always. They want time, quality.
Yeah. If you make time for me. So I'll give you a scenario where children typically will come in and say things like, when I ask them, what do you like most about mom, dad? Or if we just ask them about their best versions of their parent, it's always related to something they typically engage with. I like when they take me to the park and play with me. I like when we used to go ride the train. I like when we, whatever it is. But it's always something they did collaboratively with that person.
When we go shopping.
Yep. And so if you break it down, you realize that it's when they make time with you. Yeah. Now, not making time for you.
They're not saying, oh, we're going to play together and then not.
Right.
They're literally, let's do something together.
So do you suppose when a child comes to a parent and says, can you play with me? Do you think they're really saying, can you play with me? Or are they saying, is there something deeper to that message?
I think a lot of times it is, well, depending on the age of the child, it could be really just play. But really it's, I want you to be part of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And, you know, when I work with parents and kids, because of that, I actually talk to them like, what are some things that you do that you can include your kid? Like, can they help you with dishes? Can they help you make dinner? Let them be a part of what you're doing. So in that way, you're spending time with them, and the kids see it as spending time. They don't see it as a chore.
So when a kid's stuck in a triangle, you're saying is you can help them become more inclusive in a positive way.
But exactly, because the whole impact is that exclusion of, if you don't do this, you're going to be excluded.
There's a threat.
There's a threat there of that piece.
Correct.
You know, one of the things that it also teaches when you have triangulation, the impact on the kids can be teaching them passive-aggressive behaviors, because you have these two parents who are not talking to each other, and they're talking through the kid. Well, it teaches the kid that's how you handle stuff.
Yeah, it's almost like, I don't want to talk to your other parent, so I'll talk through you so that it goes to them. And that is probably the most common example of triangulation.
Oh, totally.
Is, hey, when you see your dad, tell him. Yeah. Can I tell you a really sad story I heard from an attorney friend of mine? No, well, I won't say it's sad. I'll say it's kind of how it progressed. And I think what happened, because I'm going to give the layer of what this parent did in response that made it very magical for the child. So there was actually multiple pieces of the Ation built in. Yeah. Okay. And it was the triangulation was definitely present. And then there was an alienation piece there to it as well. But I'll tell you the story anyway. So her parents divorced when she was really young. She's about 7 years old, I think it was, if I remember correctly. And she says, hey, I know you're going to your dad's. I have these papers. She puts them in her backpack. And she says, your dad needs to sign these. And she said, what is it? She goes, it's not for you to, it's adult stuff, but just make sure your dad signs these papers. She goes, okay. So she has her little backpack she carries back and forth between her parents. She goes to her dad's house. Dad, greets her, love, hey, sweetheart, whatever. She's at dad's house, and she goes and plays with her stuff. Yeah. And dad starts going through her bag just to make sure she has all her things. Well, he finds the paper, and he looks through it, and he calls her in. He calls her back into the kitchen, wherever he was, and he tells her to come in, and she goes in there. And he says, hey, what is this? Just want to see what she'd say.
Yeah.
And she said, I don't know. Mom said you have to sign it. And so he says to his kid, do you want me to sign this? And she goes, I don't know. Mom said you have to. And so he just says, do you know what this is? And she said, no, because remember, Mom wouldn't tell her.
Yeah.
He decides to tell her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know. See, I was cringing too. I was cringing too, except listen to what he did. He says, he didn't tell her everything's in there. All he said is, if I sign these, I can't be your dad.
Oh.
So he just basically said, this is
In a
the
very
impact.
civilized version.
This is the impact of what that would mean.
Yeah.
If I sign this, I can't be your dad. And she says, well, I don't want that. And he says, okay, well, I'm not going to sign them. And if Mom says anything to you, right, just tell her to talk to me. So he de-triangulated.
Which is fantastic.
Because what did he do? He didn't say, go tell your mom. Well,
Yeah,
he says,
no.
if your mom says anything to you, would you tell her to talk to me? Basically, it needs to come to me, not to you.
And that's actually the what I talk to parents about, to de-triangulate. If you have an issue with your parent, the co-parent, talk to them directly. And that's the whole point of triangulation anyway, is you're taking 3 people, but you're only talking to 2 of them. And that third person is not talking to the others. So you're getting in the middle of it.
Well, here's what's funny. Have you ever played the game telephone when you were a kid?
Oh, God, yeah.
Does the message ever end the same?
No.
Okay. Do you suppose when a parent tells a child, tell your parent, that the message is actually going to come out exactly the way?
That's not what I said. Then we get.
Well, what I meant was.
Yes. Well, and the thing is, what they don't understand, when you do that, the kid is going to say what they hear.
Sure.
Not what you said.
Well, let me ask you this. I think social psychologists are coming with this idea that, are kids really saying what they hear, or they're saying what they interpret?
Oh, it's always interpretation.
And that's my point.
Yeah.
Because they're reading body language, tone.
You're mad.
Yeah, when you say it. Tell your mom.
It's amazing. So many kids come in and they're like, well, my mom's always mad. I'm like, what makes you think that? And they're like, well, she's got this face on her. She's got this look about her, and her voice sounds weird. And usually I'm like, well, what happened right before that? We're like, I don't know. I was at school.
Do you suppose, so we have children in the middle, kids are they're naturally triangulated in a divorce. Yeah. Do you suppose kids are paying more attention to what you say, how you say it, or what it looks like when you say it?
I think it's more of how you say it and what you look like when you do say it.
Okay, that's what they're reading.
That's what they're reading, because they're reading your face.
Well, and if you go...
They know when you're upset with something.
Right, if you go back to what kids crave, is they crave security, right?
Yeah, they want to know you're okay.
Right, so if the natural tendency of a divorce is that a child becomes insecure, and they're now triangulated in the middle, all they're doing is trying to read the situation. Mm-hmm. So it's not what you're saying, it's how you say it.
Yeah.
It's what it looks like when how you express yourself, the body language. I think parents forget the power of that.
And it's funny because that actually kind of goes into the coping of working with a triangle.
Yeah, that's that third segment. Go into that.
Because one of the things that when you realize that you're being triangulated, when you realize the situation is here, and it is, yes, kind of a natural situation with divorce, because you have 2 people in one house and one over here. Mm-hmm. They're not talking necessarily. And one way to do that is to talk directly to the person. If you have an issue with mom, you can't ask dad about it. You got to ask mom about it.
You're saying if you have an issue with mom, go to mom.
Yeah.
Issue
you
with
need
dad.
to have that direct conversation. And that allows you, one, to be able to feel how you feel.
Right.
They feel how they feel. And you can resolve the issue versus bringing someone else into your problem over here.
It's funny because I have that like on repeat.
Yeah.
So a statement that I'll make in session with kids, typically parents may not even be in there. I'll say something to the child. I say, is this a mom issue or dad issue? They go, dad issue. So who should it go to? And they kind of look a little like, well, if I tell dad, it might upset him, whatever else. Because remember, they want to create that security.
Exactly.
Well, what's fun, though, is I'll switch it on them. I'll say, if you're in school and you have a math problem and you go ask your science teacher about it, what are they going to tell you?
Go ask your math teacher.
Okay. I said, I know your parents don't do it that well.
Yeah.
They're willing to listen to whatever the issue is. Mm-hmm. I said, but how many issues that you've had at your dad's, your mom's been able to solve?
It's true.
Right. Or how many issues you've had at your mom's and your dad. Because the parent can't solve the issue in the other parent. But when the child takes a dad issue to mom's house, or vice versa, right? That other parent, let's say, calls the other parent and says, hey, our child's telling me X is going on. How do you suppose that parent typically responds to that?
Defensive.
100%.
All the time.
Well, why are you talking to our kid about it, right? And so now we create this pattern.
So the kid, on accident, creates their own triangulation.
The kid triangulating.
The kids do it. Now, I will say, some kids are smart. They use triangulation to their benefit sometimes because they know if they say one thing to one parent and then the other, they're going to create an issue where they get what they want because the parents are fighting now.
It's fun. It's a fun smoke screen.
Yeah.
So like the kid's in trouble at like, okay, so I'm in trouble at mom's.
Yeah. Usually it has to do with getting in trouble.
I'm in trouble at mom's. And I say, it's just unfair, Mom, because Dad never lets me play on my phone.
Yeah.
And so when I'm over here, I just want to be on my phone. I know you don't like it when I'm on my phone so much, but Dad never lets me use it at his house, so that's why I use it so much when I'm over here. Well, then the parent doesn't like Dad, so what do?
They don't talk to him.
Yeah, smoke screened him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I have a kid that I recently met with a while back, and one of the issues that came up is she has an issue with Mom. And, well, the issue with Mom was when Mom told her no.
Mm-hmm.
But Mom actually called Dad and said, hey, I told her no. I'm pretty sure this is why she's mad at me. This is what happened. Dad tells the kid completely his own version of what Mom said. He changed the wording and made it sound like Mom was making fun of her.
Oh, I see.
And treating her badly, thinking she's a different person than what she's describing. And so now we have this huge triangulation. Well, Mom and Dad don't talk at all.
How helpful is that in triangulation?
It's so not helpful. And this kid is like stuck, and she thinks her mom hates her.
Oh no.
So it's like, it's frustrating. But learning how to work with it, one, managing your own thoughts. Understanding how you truly feel, because when you're in a triangulation
now, who are you speaking about there? Are you talking about the parents or the kid?
Either one, actually.
Okay, start with one. What
with the kid is managing, is this issue really about me?
The child having to ask themselves, is this really about me?
Think about how you feel and be able to separate yourself out from what is the actual issue here.
Got it.
So that you can step back and say, I can control my behavior. I can't control theirs.
Basically, the kid disassociates from, that's not my problem.
Yeah. And sends it back to the parent. And this is what I talk about with kids all the time.
But my parents suck at solving problems.
That's great. But when I have kids and I'm like, well, my mom's coming to me and telling me all these things about my dad and showing me videos and things. I'm like, oh, it's so frustrating.
Yeah, well, the sense of alignment, right? Trying to get the kid to align.
And I work with kids trying to build their confidence in themselves enough to say, this is not my issue.
If you need another person to validate your perspective or what you think you're doing, let me show you how bad so-and-so is versus, isn't that really something in you?
Yeah, totally.
I asked a parent once, I said,
it's their own insecurity.
They said, I just wish they understood how bad their other parent was. And I'll say something to them, Jen, like, well, how did you figure it out?
Yeah.
Well, I lived with them or I was there. And I was like, well, do you don't think your kid's smart enough to figure that out?
I do bring that up to parents sometimes because they're smart kids.
Isn't there a difference between being a bad husband or a bad wife versus being a bad mom or dad? Aren't those two different roles? Okay.
Well, and one thing I point out to parents, I'm like, your relationship with your ex is not the same as their relationship with their parent.
Oh, yeah.
It's not the same kind of a relationship. It's not a romantic relationship. It's a different type of relationship. And you've got to understand those dynamics are different.
Yeah. It sounds like you're saying that one of the things parents have to do is realize whose problem is this really?
Yes. Yeah.
Right? To de-triangulate a system, you go, whose problem is this really? I'm going to have to talk to parent X over there as a result of not making my kid have to feel like they have to do it. So basically, don't make your kid a messenger.
Exactly. Well, and that's another thing that goes with coping with it is clarifying. If you've got parent A coming to you saying this, go to about parent B.
So back up. I lost you. That's my fault. The listeners might have understood that. Parent A to B, go back to A. So parent A, what now?
Parent A is coming to the kid and saying, your dad said this, or your mom said this.
They're talking to the child.
They're talking
saying
to
that
the
other
child,
parent said.
This is what the other parent said. Well, to clarify that, okay, great. That's what you say. You go to the parent B or dad or mom and say, Is there something I can do different? What is this really about?
Who goes to parent B?
The child. Asking directly. When you have, and it works with any relationship. If you've got one person telling you something about a third party, go to the third party directly.
Oh, yeah.
And ask them, clarify from them. What's really the issue? Is there an issue between you and me?
Yeah.
Or is this something I'm trying to figure out over here?
You know, I'll tell you something embarrassing. When I was in high school, this kid, and I didn't know anything about triangulation. This kid comes to me and says, "Hey, Michael." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Hey, so-and-so was talking about you in science."
Yeah.
Okay, so some of the kids saying something about me. So what do they say? Well, he's talking all this trash.
Yeah.
Right? So he tells me all the examples of things that they said. Yeah. I don't want to repeat them on here. We were in high school. Can you imagine what they said?
Oh, yeah.
Right. So he tells me all these things. And they said, I don't know why they would say all those things, but they said all that. Mm-hmm. So something in me said, he wants me to go fight so-and-so.
Yeah.
And so I said, are you sure they said all that? He goes, I was there. I heard all of it. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, come with me. Yeah. And they said, okay. They thought they were going to go watch a fight.
Yeah.
So they watched me walk up to this kid that said this, and I'll just make up a name. His name was Justin. Yeah. So I walk up to Justin, and I said, hey, so-and-so over here, Frank told me that you were saying these things about me in science. And he looks over at Frank and goes, I didn't say that. And I said, it sounds like you and Frank have something y'all need to settle. And I walked off.
Oh, wow.
There's your de-triangulation. And
that's fabulous.
Well, because what happened is I'm not gonna come at it as if, I'm gonna flirt with it, but I'm not gonna come at it if it's mine, if it's not mine.
Yeah.
Right? If Justin really was in class talking about me, not saying it to me, then what weight did it really hold? And I think as a kid, I didn't know what I was doing, but I was really de-triangulating that system. And so you're saying, so what you said earlier was your parent A, your kid comes to you, says parent B said this about you.
Yeah.
And you're saying your response as a parent should be, that sounds like something you should talk to your dad about?
Yeah.
Or your mom about, or whoever, the other parent? Okay. Mm-hmm. You should send the kid back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you're separating yourself from the...
Oh, that's not mine. That's
not me. That's y'all's issue.
Oh, yeah. But they were making me the issue, though.
Exactly.
They were making me the product.
And you're clarifying that you're not actually the problem.
Ah.
That's where the clarification comes in, is going to that other parent or that other person and asking, is this what you think about me? Is this true?
Oh.
Is this true? And clarifying or asking a question about, this is what I was told. Can you help me understand it? Yeah. And I mean, kids aren't going to talk that way. It's me talking, but I think it's important for them to go. If you have you got someone over here saying you have a problem with this third person, go into the third person and say, do you have a problem? Yeah. Do we have a problem?
I'm trying to think how I would handle that. If like one of my kids came to me and said, Mom said this about you. Mm-hmm. And I think what I would say is, well, is that something you think your mom wants to talk to me about? This probably be my response. Yeah. Is that something you think your mom wants to talk to me about? And they go, no, I don't think so. I go, okay. Is there something you and I need to fix or resolve?
Yeah.
And they go, no. And I go, okay. Well, then we just move on.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make it a big deal. Now the kid goes, well, I don't know. Why would mom say that? I say, I'm not sure. Why don't you talk to your mom about that? Like I would do what you're saying there. I think for me is I want to show the child that I hear them, but I'm not going to get sucked into the web.
And it kind of goes back to what this looks like and how triangulation really works. Because usually the person who is manipulating the situation is wanting to get a reaction.
Yeah.
They're trying to knock you off your game so that you react, you explode, and then they have something they can use against the other person.
Well, it's almost like they're going to load the gun, and when you fire, they go, look, they're shooting.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where a lot of divorce situations get sometimes, especially in really the high conflict ones, because you get into this game of manipulate everyone involved, and the kid learns how to do it. They learn from you how to do it.
The fun part
is, then they do it.
Well, the parent will say they're gaslighting me.
Oh yeah, totally.
And then I sit there thinking what's really happening is you're being triangulated.
Yeah.
And you recognized it at some layer. But you're not really good at responding to it. You're probably really good at reacting to it.
Well, and it's kind of like, it's funny, the story that you described from high school, it makes me think of some of my other clients that aren't divorce related, because I have a lot of junior high kids. That
was my maturity level at that.
The triangulation that happens, so-and-so said this, and you hear rumors about other people. It's kind of like that in a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
You're hearing rumors about the other person. You're like, okay, well, is that true or not? And that's what going and clarifying, is this active? Is this real? And then looking for the balance between.
Go
ahead.
What should parents, I want parents, I know that kids are probably listening to our podcast, but
true.
What should parents do in a situation that is it something like say, hey, we need you to recognize it, or it's more of a regardless of where you are in the divorce, keep these things in mind? Like, what would be the best way for them?
One of the things that I've seen is don't react quickly to something surprising.
Oh, what should they do instead?
Step back and think about it first.
Step back. Okay.
Step back, think about what's really the information that I'm getting.
If you get caught off guard.
If you're caught off guard by something,
slow down.
Surprise. Yeah. Step back and say, wait a minute.
Step back.
There's a little bit of, give yourself some breathing room and realize you can't control the other parent. You can't make someone do anything that you want them to do. You can only control your reaction. You only control your own feelings and your own emotions.
Okay.
And kind of being able to step back and realize.
The control you actually have is self.
Yeah.
Okay. So step back, slow down. Remember that the only thing you control is self.
Yeah.
Okay. What else?
And using some balance between your work, your friends, your family, your children. You need balance.
What does that look like?
Having a little bit of time for yourself.
Mm.
Being able to step back and say, I need a breather. When you are stressed, your kids see it. Everyone sees it, whether you want them to or not. And I think that's tricky in recognizing how you really feel about something and being able to calm yourself down and before you have a discussion about it.
I think my wife used to say kids catch what you're doing rather than hear what you say.
Oh, yeah. They're
always catching you in the act. It's almost like when you grieve, they watch how you do it, and that's how they learn if it's okay or not. So you're more likely to be caught as a parent than you are to be by your child. Yeah. Than to actually learn from. Like, listen to what I say versus, watch what I do.
Yeah.
And kids are watching what you do more than just listening to what you say.
Well, it's why, after a while, yelling doesn't work.
Because when does it work?
I don't know that really ever works.
Continue.
Yelling is yelling.
Okay.
And then the only other thing I was thinking about was, it just went out of my head. So there you go.
That's okay. So let me just go through what you said so far. Step back, slow down. Remember, you can only control yourself. Basically, how you respond to. I know you use the word react. React to me is emotional. Respond is more logical. Yeah. So you only control how you respond to a situation versus reacting to it.
Exactly.
And then kids are catching you in the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're watching what you do.
They're going to pick up on how you handle the stress of the situation.
Right.
If you can handle your own self, then they will learn how to do that themselves.
Perfect.
But if they see you out of control, crying, and this is where the Ation series starts to get connected because they become the parent and they're trying to make you feel better.
Yeah, kids assume roles to try to solve problems. So, well, thank you so much for being here, everyone. Thank you, Jen.
Yeah, thanks.
That went by really fast. I know it's one of the parts of the Ation series of Triangulation. Thank you so much for being here. We hope that you'll continue to listen in. Please send us questions. We're hoping to get some more of those. Follow us on Instagram or Facebook. And you can also catch our podcast on pretty much any of the platforms.
Yeah.
So we can't wait to hear from you, see you, and keep moving forward. Thanks, everyone.